Dugout Nation, welcome to the Dugout CEO podcast. What a great show we have in store for you today with Todd Gongwer, a leader of leaders. He has helped both coaches and leaders reach the pinnacle of success, being an advisor to Division I coaches, World Series winners, and a mentor to all sorts of leaders in the marketplace. He's the author of Lead for God's Sake, a best-selling book and one of my personal favorites, a coach, a speaker, and encourager. Today, we're going to hit on passion, purpose, and priorities and how they must all work together, and he's going to share some cool stories of coaches he has worked with both in football and baseball. And we're going to touch on a really interesting subject of warriors and, yes, monsters. Todd, welcome to the Dugout CEO.
Hey, thanks, Casey. It's awesome to be here, man. I'm excited to talk to you.
So, crazy story. You've actually been to my house. You probably don't remember that, do you?
Okay.
Okay.
You got to tell me where.
So Marissa was on your team, right? She's on your team.
Yeah.
And Marissa went to school with my wife, Connie, at Bethel College. So
Oh, wow.
you were in town in Atlanta for a speaking engagement. And I guess you dropped Marissa off at my house to hang out with my wife. And then I guess you went to your speaking engagement. And
Oh my gosh.
And I found out right when you left. And Connie's like, hey, Marissa works for this guy named Todd. And I'm like, Todd who? And I'm like, oh, wait, what? And I showed her the book. I go, Connie, I just got done reading this book. Go get him, find him. And here we are 7 years later, maybe. And I finally got you.
Man.
So thanks for being here.
Yeah. Oh, well, I wish you would have gotten, I definitely would have loved to have hung around a little bit and spent some more time with you, but Marissa should have called me.
in good timing, all things happen, and here we are.
That's
so
right.
Thanks for being here. I know you're a small town Indiana guy, so am I. So like
100%.
How small was your town? Because I want to see if mine was smaller or bigger. Like, what are we talking
about? So Wakarusa is, I think it's like 1,400.
Okay. So
that's little, man.
Yeah.
That's little.
I like to look at stoplights. So I've been to Wakarusa. I'm from North Webster. So we had two stoplights and we could almost hold our breath through it. Wakarusa and North Webster are about the same, aren't they?
Yeah. I think we added another one just a few years ago, just because State Road 19 goes through. So there's like two on State Road 19, but it's a total of three. So
yeah. So we got a good bond over small Midwestern towns.
Yeah, that's right.
Two. So you did a little bit of basketball coaching at Bethel College, and tell me, like, how did that come about? Being a basketball coach at Bethel College.
Yeah. So I've always been really passionate about all sports, and basketball was kind of the one that I landed on, even in junior high. I just really kind of gravitated toward wanting to play that longer and really wanting to coach it. From the time I was like 13, 14 years old, I actually knew I wanted to be a coach more than even play. I mean, I loved playing, but I wanted to coach. So I played as long as I could. I went down to Florida Southern, was a walk-on down there, and then just went through some injuries and things, and was like, when I came back home, we had a mutual friend that kind of connected us, myself and Mike Lightfoot. And, I'd kind of expressed my passion for wanting to coach even more than play. And he was gracious enough at that time to kind of let me be a part of the staff just to learn. And then, what I thought, and probably he thought too, was going to be maybe just a year or two or a couple, short stint, ended up being with him for 12 years. And doing that for a long time. We had just some awesome seasons where I just learned a ton from him. He was an awesome mentor to me, and a ton from just the experience of coaching, college basketball. And as you know, in the 90s, we had like a 4-year run where we won 3 out of 4 NAIA national championships. So it's pretty cool, perspective shaper for me. And I was in the business world that whole time at the same time, because back then they didn't have assistants that you couldn't make a living on that. I'll put it that way. I got a little bit of a pay eventually, but you couldn't make a living that way. So that was a huge perspective shaper for me and my journey, not only, prior to writing the book, but, I always share with people spending 12 years running in both the business and the sports world at that level was just incredibly shaping in my life and my journey, and has helped me work on both ends because that's what I do now. I work with teams all over the country in sports world, but also in the business world. And there's so many parallels that both can learn from the other. So it's been a cool
Yeah.
thing.
So whether you're building a basketball program or a football program or a baseball program, or you're, a CEO of a business, there's probably similar things that you want to make sure you do in order to
Yeah.
build an effective organization. Looking back at your years in the 90s, winning all those national championships, what was it that Coach Lightfoot did? Like, what made that program so successful that you think our listeners can learn from what you did and how you won, and maybe they can take some things from it?
Yeah, I think, oh gosh, there's so many, like, as you know, you've been in and around it in the coaching world. I mean, there's so many variables and that have to be, you just got to get the right things. We had really good players. But to get that, I think the program built on genuine relationships was an absolute key. I mean, coach was great at that and he had all of us. And I love that part. That was my thing was always about the human dynamics and, kind of helping connect at a deeper level. I loved that aspect of the coaching world. And so he did a great job of making sure that we were focused on that. And he was focused on that, of course. And the relationships they were genuine. It wasn't about, hey, what can I get from you as an athlete? It was, more about, hey, what can we pour into these kids? How can we pour into these kids to help them be the best that they can be, not just now, but in life. And so, with all the changes, particularly in the NCAA with the transfer portal and all the, things going on now, I mean, just having this conversation yesterday with a Power Five football coach. And, again, we go back to it now more than ever, the concept of genuine relationships. Are they real? Do these kids really matter? Because as a coach, it is so hard to keep that in balance and in the right check. And, it's always been important, but I think now more than ever, the answer to the transfer portal and NIL and all of these other things that are pulling everybody apart is, are you able to build? Do you really care? Do you really care? Genuinely.
So what does that look like? And because it does feel like a lot of people, I used to be one of these people where you have employees on your team and they're just a number to get you to a certain number.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a real thing to that because you have pressures as a coach or a leader or a business owner. Like, you have to meet payroll, you have to grow your revenue, you have to make investors happy. Like, how do you balance that tension of we have to be successful versus, hey, I need to take care of my people and have genuine, relationships?
Yeah. It's really, really hard. And that's why I would tell you that I think it's more the exception than the norm in both of those worlds, in both the business and sports world. It's not to say that there's not, there's a lot of people out there that care about people on both ends of both the business and the sports world. But I would tell you that there's, the ones that are truly committed to making sure that genuine love and that impact truly does, supersede anything else. Those are very, very rare. And it's an intention. There's all kinds of things that go into that too. I think intentionality is the key, just like with anything else in our lives. I mean, if you mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, none of those things are going to be on an upward trajectory unless you intentionally engage in it. And I think that's the same thing with those relationships and building that dynamic into the business and sports world. To your point, I always tell and you've heard it said, I didn't make this up, obviously, but the, profits and I would say wins they're a part of it. It's like breathing. We have to breathe to live, but we don't live to breathe. And it's the same thing in the sports world and the business world. We got to make money. We got to win. Yeah. But we shouldn't live to win and make money. It should be about something way bigger than both of those things. And that's hard because there's a lot of, that's a powerful attraction, the power that comes with money and wins on both of those worlds. But that's a heart thing too, which is why kind of the last 12, 13 years of my journey and even in cultural development stuff that I'm working with is always about, we talk about skill set, mindset, but heart set is what gets the leftovers. And actually heart set is what if we're in either one of those worlds, heart set's where the majority of the problems and challenges lie. As people, their hearts are in the wrong place. They lose sight of the right thing, the bigger purpose. They lose sight of the relationships and the things that should be most important. Those are heart set issues. And so that's what the focus should always, what the focus has to be on. And that's a nonstop intentionality that has to be put in place by the leader at the top first and foremost, and then trickle down.
So this heart issue. So I want to talk about that, but I just got done watching the Urban Meyer Florida documentary on Netflix. Have you watched that yet?
Yeah, I did. Absolutely. I watched it shortly after it
Yeah.
came out because I mean, obviously I've had a lot of interactions with Urban over the years, spent a lot of time with him and watched, I mean, that journey. So I was super intrigued by what that would be.
Yeah. And, I think it was hard to watch because I'm like, and I know you've worked with them and you work with Power Five coaches. I mean, and share what you can or you can't. But part of me is like, man, I really love this guy, and then part of me is like, oh man, he's got the wrong motivation or intention. Like he brought the one kid and he came home and he sat on his couch and he basically adopted this guy, and then he's just
Mm-hmm.
taking these guys and saying kill and murder and if you don't like kill your competition, you're nothing. So I'm just like that battle, but it's like I'm trying to put myself in his shoes, and I'm like, if you don't win a national championship, you're getting hate mail. And if you don't keep winning, you're not going to have a job. And like, how do you balance that tension? And whether you're coaching at Florida or you're coaching at a small school in the Midwest or you're running a small business, like it just feels like there's all these pressures. And, it looked like at the end, he kind of cracked the way they showed it. He had to, take Ambien and then drink a beer and he couldn't sleep. And like he
Yeah.
tried to quit, but then he couldn't quit and he unretired. And then so like, not we don't have to talk about him per se, but that's a story that's typical. So where do we
Mm-hmm.
go from there to how do you win the right way?
Yeah. I think that's, I mean, again, like I said, I think it's an extreme example for sure, because I think everybody's wired a little bit different. He's one of those guys that, and that was it was the end of that documentary was really, you know, about the time that he came across the book and read Lead for God's Sake and reached out to me and kind of had gone through, really kind of hit him in the heart. And because you can see, and you just described it really well, kind of the tension, even the tension that was battling in his own heart. And again, to your point, that many, many coaches and leaders in both business and sports world battle that tension of, maintaining a healthy balance between we got to be competitive and we got to want to win and we got to go fight, and all those things. And yet keeping the right perspective and making sure that the value of human beings and even how we're developing them for the future truly is the priority over, just do I want to, and I always say this, and this is going to be I'm working on this in, likely another book one of these days, but the difference between warrior and monsters. Are you building warriors or monsters? And monsters will kill, monsters will destroy, monsters will do what but a monster doesn't have self-control. A monster doesn't understand humility and all of the things that are needed actually for, the long term. A warrior is calculated. A warrior is fighting for a bigger cause. A warrior isn't just fighting to feed their hunger and their natural. So I would tell you that I get, my heart is helping coaches and business leaders, and when I talk about the heart stuff or the heart set thing, part of that is helping them understand even within, because I think in many cases we all have a warrior and a monster within. What are we feeding? What are we really trying to build here? And I think that's what it that's what it really comes down to, because it is a man, and especially people that haven't been, on the inside, I would say, particularly of a big time college football coach and a power five. I mean, the the things that they have to manage and the audiences that they have to appease, not just the fans, but when you talk about the NCAA, the administration, the rest of the faculty and staff, their own staff, the fans, the media. And then on top of all of that, then they got, of course, their players, which is supposed to be the priority. And it's it's a beast, so to speak, to manage that. So it's not easy what those guys do. And coaching period isn't. But those guys in particular have like just a lot of numbers from a lot of different angles coming at them. So it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about that monster and warrior. So you're saying there's a monster inside of me and there's a warrior inside of me. Like, what does that actually mean, and what do I do with it?
Yeah. So I think the monster inside of us tends to move toward our natural, how we were born. And you and I know this, man. We're born, and our flesh wants what we want. We're selfish. It's all about me, 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 me. That's where we are as babies, right? We're hungry. We throw a fit. Why? Because we want, we want attention. We want fed. We want everything is about us. As we get older and we develop and we begin to understand the social components around us, hopefully if we mature and, my faith walks me through how to do this in the right ways, in many, many ways, I should say, in a powerful way. But, we understand the importance of selflessness and serving those around us, and not focusing so much on ourselves as focusing on others and how we can help them. And, within that is, again, the power of self-control, genuinely loving others, walking in joy and peace, patience, kindness, goodness. You see where I'm going, right? Patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. All of those things are, and again, I'll go back to a warrior mentality can walk in those things. A warrior, again, is calculated. A warrior is leading, an army of troops to do. So a warrior has so many of these leadership things that are not just about them. It's about the bigger cause. It's about the bigger people. It's about, and again, like I said, they're walking in it in a healthy way. So we have that within us too, if we open our hearts up to that and we become intentional with, hey, this is a better way. This is a better way. And we may not destroy everybody that gets in our path, like a monster will seek to. But let me tell you, at the end of my day, when I lay my head on the pillow at night, I want to know I'm doing it the right way. And even more importantly than laying my head on the pillow at night is when I breathe my last breath and I'm done here on this earth. I want my family. I want my legacy. I want all those things to be way more about a warrior mentality than a monster mentality. And so there's a lot more to that. We could talk for 2 hours because I told you I've been working on, that's a big part of what's to come. So stay tuned.
Yeah. So like, when is this book coming out? Because like those two things right there, I'm like, okay, great. Thank you. You've uncovered something in me, monster warrior. What am I supposed to do with it now? So is this, because it's like, is this a checklist? Is this, I need accountability partners? Like, what do I do?
Yes.
Knowing, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's one. I mean, like, it's funny because you just hit the nail on the head. And I'll tell you, that's the difference with a lot of coaches and business leaders that I work with. The accountability that you just mentioned is a huge part of that. Is, do you have people around you that are helping you and can actually see when you're going down the monster path and would check you for it?
Yeah.
And the higher up you go, the more powerful you become. And again, when you're sitting at a head coach's spot or a CEO spot or any kind of leadership spot, I mean, the higher you go, the more difficult it is to find those people that'll speak truth into your life and that'll call you out and that'll put a level of accountability around you that is truly healthy. And again, like I said, helps you maintain that focus on the right things, walk humbly and serving others, and be selfless in your life, and again, self-control, those types of things. How many times in a is there an assistant coach that'll walk up to the head coach after the head coach just completely destroyed somebody in front of the team or something and cross the line? Let's just say they crossed the line on something. Is there somebody on the staff that's got the fortitude that's going to walk up and go, hey, you cross the line there, man. That's not what we're about. I know that's not what you're about. So,
And you're saying an assistant coach
and
would do that to the head coach
very
potentially.
rarely. I'm
Very
saying
rarely.
that if you have a warrior's mentality, you build that around you. But very, 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 very few of the most powerful ones do.
Yeah,
And
because it feels like
therein
they
lies the
don't.
challenge.
Yeah, like the ones that are at the top, they're
They don't have to.
they're the know-it-all. They're the, hey, I'm at the top, it's my rules, and it's almost like they haven't created a culture where they feel like people feel safe to share that with them, right? Or when people do share, they just brush it off. And
That's right.
and I was there. Like, it takes one to know one. I was in that position. And I think it was because literally I was just trying to survive. I was at the top, but I was almost like too scared to tell people like I wasn't doing well. And I had to put on this like this face of, hey, I got it
Yeah.
all together. I'm at the top. Why are people so scared, whether they're in leadership, whether they're a coach or an owner or whatever? Why are people so scared to ask for help or to create that culture where they have that person that is able to speak truth into their life?
Yeah. I mean, that's a long, there's a long, long, long answer to that question. So many things that fuel the insecurities and even the ego, narcissism. There's different things that, over time develop, grow, whatever, if left unchecked. And so, yeah, there's a lot to that. But I just think, again, that's been it's been interesting because I will tell you for the last, even before I wrote the book, probably one of the things that I feel is one of maybe my most important calls, part of my most important calls in my life is, is working with individuals that maybe are in those shoes, coaching a really, really high level CEO or a really, really, highly successful CEO or head coach, because it is a lonely spot. And what happens is what really fuels this more than anything else is the vast, vast majority of the people around you become that yes man, or that, for lack of a better term, sycophants. And where everything you say, you know, yes, yes, yeah, okay, 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 and they feed it because people are selfish themselves. People want approval. People want power, so they want to appease power. And, they don't want to lose their job. They want to climb the ladder in their job. So if I tell the boss everything they want to hear, if I can figure that out, you know, and so you just get a ton of that in a ton of places. And it's just rare to find those people who are really willing. And I would tell you that love you enough to risk even the relationship or a position that you may have with them. And I've always told the clients, the coaches that I work with, the CEOs or leaders that I work with, I've always told them from the beginning, whether, even from a standpoint of, if I'm getting paid to do it, I will still tell them, listen, I don't care if you never give me another penny. I don't care if you fire me tomorrow. I don't care. I cannot care about that. I care about you. And there will be times when I'm going to tell you something that you really do not want to hear and you probably disagree with. And that's okay. Because you know what? Nobody else is going to. And we all need that. Every one of us needs those because we all have blind spots.
Yeah.
And so again, like I said, but you hit the nail on the head. When you have 2 or 3 national championship rings, I don't care what level, or you're making 3, 4, 5, 8, $10 million a year, either one of those things, I don't have to listen to you. Why would I have to listen to you? I don't have to listen to anybody because obviously I've figured it out. And the thing that I would tell you is there's so many other factors that go into that figuring it out process that, it's like, man, you got to be careful with that. You got to be careful with that because I've seen many, and all of us have seen many of some of the most quote unquote successful people, both in the sports and business world, that were also very clearly some of the most narcissistic, out of control, ego, and yet they got that way. Well, if that's what you want for your life and that's what you want your legacy to be, then there is a way to do that. And that's the monster way, I would tell you, is you destroy anybody that gets in your way. If you care about the other side of that and you truly have a conviction to walk in a different way and leave a different kind of legacy, then I think there's a different mentality that goes with that. And so keeping that in check is really, really hard. And most will tell you, most of the highest level, most successful people out there will tell you, yes, I absolutely want to be self-aware. Self-awareness is so, so important. It's so, so important. It's so, so important until you make them aware of something they really don't like. And then they don't want to be aware of that anymore. And they don't want to believe you, and they want to find another answer somewhere else. So, I mean, and that's way more the norm than the exception. So, but there's a lot of, I shouldn't say that because there's a ton of great coaches out there and great, business CEOs. I've been blessed to be around, a ton of really, really good, good-hearted
Yeah.
leaders too. So, but I've been able to also see both sides.
Yeah, and I think there's two types of people listening to this. There's the person that's listening to this that's, the leader of an organization. One, who is your person that is willing to speak truth into you? Have you given them
All
the
right.
platform to, and have you made it safe for them to do that? And ask them, and
Mm-hmm.
just know it's like they're not going to want to just give it to you. Like you're going to have to beg for it and ask for it. And then there might be that person that you're the person that you see somebody, whether they're a friend or a family member or they're a leader or a boss, and you're like, hey, I see something in them that others see that they don't see. And I would encourage you to think about, all right, what am I going to do with that? Just last weekend, we were at a men's group retreat, and a buddy was sharing with me that he's going on not a bachelor party. We're all old now. We don't even do bachelor parties. We're
Yeah.
celebrating our 40th birthday party trip to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Dominican
Yeah.
Republic. And it's him and a
Yeah.
lot of his college buddies. And this is a guy that lived his life one way, Todd, and now he's trying to live another. And
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
same group of friends that he's been around now for like the last two people's 40th birthday parties. And he's like, Casey, I just messed up. Casey, I just messed up. And he's trying to live one way back at home. And then he goes to these other environments. And I said, look, man, if you're going to go again, you need to bring somebody with you or you can't go, because in
100%.
life, people are going to become more like you or you're going to become more like them. And if they're not
That's right.
becoming more like you on this
That's
trip,
good.
you got to stop. Now, what I'm trying to figure out now, Todd, is this trip's coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm trying to figure out what to do now if, he goes without that accountability partner and he falls. But still, if he does, like I've done that. I've messed up. I've made mistakes.
Yeah.
So there's grace and there's mercy, but there's also like it's time to grow up. It's time to challenge others. And it's also, if you're at the top, like invite, other people in. So Todd, I'm tracking with you
Yeah.
100%. So I want
Yeah.
to get
So
into
good.
this real quick, your journey. You said you were working 80-hour work weeks. You're trying to figure out a way to win at home, at work, with your wife. And then,
Yeah.
your whole thing is misguided passions, misplaced priorities, misunderstood purpose. Like, do you need to understand all three of those things? Or is there like one thing that you got to get this thing first in order to really understand everything else?
Yeah. That's a really good, I like how you phrased that, Casey. I think understanding of all those, I think understanding our ultimate purpose here on this earth is kind of the start of that. At least that was for me,
Yeah.
because it puts those other priorities in place. It opens your eyes to, all right, wait a minute, are my passions really about what I say they are, or are they really about me, 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 me?
Wow. Yeah.
And is my family really the priority, or is it, and so when I talk about the bigger why and why God has us here on this earth, why did he create you? What's your ultimate purpose? If you're ever going to be your best, anything for something to be, I mean, this is a pair of glasses. It was created for a specific purpose. And I can use this thing. I mean, I can have an itch on my head. I can go like this. I mean, I could be mad at somebody. I could throw it at somebody and it could hit. So it could serve a lot of different purposes, but it's still not like what it was created for. Right here. I mean, that's it. My gosh, I see so much better now. I don't know why I forgot to have those on. I should have had those on. But I mean, that's the reality, and that's our lives. God created us, and the thing is we overcomplicate it because sometimes we try to get so hyper focused on, okay, what are my gifts, what are my talents, and where's all these sweet spots and all these other things. And I always tell people, you're thinking wrong. The foundation of our purpose begins with our relationships. God created us for relationship first and foremost. You want a happy life. You want a life of peace, I should say, more than happy. The peace and joy is going to come from your genuine relationships, first with him, and then with all those he's put in your path for a reason. And when everything starts, when you grasp that as a foundational truth of your life, everything changes. You know what I mean? Like everything should flow from that now. My passions, if they're pulling me away from healthy relationships, then I got to check my passions. If what my pursuits, if my, all of those things. And again, from a priority standpoint, that falls into line with that too, is once I understand the relationship thing, if I'm married, my belief is if I'm married, that's my number one priority here on this earth. Now, God, I talk about this in the book, but God's too big to be put in a priority box. He doesn't want to be number one. He wants to be at the center of everything, So my wife is my number one priority on the earth. He's at the center of that relationship, though. My kids are right after my wife. My number one thing you can do, the best way to love your kids is love your wife, right? But Christ has to be at the center of that. And again, what is that? That's relationship. It's not about doing all the rituals and saying, oh, I don't do this and do this and don't do this and do this. Those things fall in line after. But it's a relationship. And when you get that, man, everything else, and it doesn't mean listen, it's a lifetime journey. You know this. I mean, I can get it today and be on track, and the next 3 weeks be completely out of balance and stressed out and focusing on the wrong things and go, I'm losing. But the peace in my heart has to be the ultimate, like, I know that's it. And that's my true north. That's what I got to continue to go back to. So
Really good. So who should read this book? Lead for God's Sake. It's been out now for, a decade plus, right?
yeah.
Crazy.
Came out in 2010. So it's daggone time I write another book, isn't it? So,
Yeah. I think we're hinting on that. You let us know when that's coming, right? Or at least give us some visuals or something, because that monster and warrior thing I think is really good. But I mean, this book, I'm not going to spoil it, but you get to the end and it just kind of built up for me. And then all of a sudden it was like a wow moment where I'm like, because what I was doing in my life was exactly what the main character was doing in the book. So I'll tease that, but like, who should read this thing? Like, because for me, it's like, I'm not going to read something unless it could solve my problem. At least back in the day, I'm like, I didn't read for enjoyment. Like if I want to do fun things, I'm going to go watch a baseball game or something. But like, I want a book to help me solve a problem. What is the problems this book will help you solve? Or what is like the end result you would want somebody, or you wanted somebody to get as a result of reading this book?
Yeah. Who should read it? I think, one of the really, I guess, cool things about it, I never intended to write it as a parable. The way it came out was really, really unique. And I feel like God just did a really cool thing there. And because of that, what I've seen on the journey, when I wrote it, I thought I was writing it to, and I was 40 when I wrote it. So I'm in my 50s now, but I really thought I was writing it to that 40-year-old that was reached a point in their life or they're climbing, misguided purpose, misguided passion, all those things. And the coach, the business person, all that. But as the journey, started and the book kind of took off, I started getting notes from, both male and female alike, different age groups alike, different professions, all kinds of different, and what I kept hearing from people was it just kind of meets you where you are, because if you're an athlete, you can relate, or even a student, you can relate to what the kids are dealing with, the characters that are, students in the book, what they're dealing with, and they're battling kind of in their own identity and their pursuits and selfishness and different things like that. If you're a parent, you can relate. The kids can relate to dealing with parents and even dealing with teachers and coaches like that. If you're in the business world, you can relate to the drive in the business world. So it's a long answer to your question, Casey, but I mean, I thought there was a much more narrow group, and yet it just it's been crazy how, you can't hardly get young people, and I get it, to read a book these days. I certainly wasn't wanting to read when I was high school or college for that matter. But the responses that I get, if a college athlete or a high school student or something, I mean, like they'll read it and go, and it went so fast. It was,
Yeah.
So, and then of course the people more in later stages of life when they have kids and they're raising kids and things like that. So And I've heard from all of them. And that's a really cool, and it's a reminder to me that I had a lot of help from above writing it, because there's no way I could have written
Sure.
something on my own to kind of reach that group. So,
Sure.
I know it's been kind of crazy.
Any, people listening to this, they could be a coach, baseball coach potentially. Is there any stories that kind of come to mind, or coaches that you worked with on the baseball side of things that you could share to say, hey, this was something?
Oh, I mean, gosh, two of the biggest. I mean, like, and I've had some great experience with different coaches around the country, but I know both Brian O'Connor, the University of Virginia head coach, and Gary Gilmore, Gilly. Both those guys have become truly great friends over the last 10 years. I've spent time with both of them, a lot of time with both of them, time with their teams, different times. Gilly went through just unbelievable. If you've ever watched or seen his story of winning the World Series, College World Series, a few years back, we did it. We actually did a documentary. I did a documentary on it because of how he had read the book and then gone through a really, really tough season. And then for whatever reason, felt like he needed to read it again because he got it, but he was like, I just didn't get it. And then he told about how and just hearing his story, tears up all the time when he tells it. Hearing his story of what it did to his heart and how it moved him into a deeper focus on loving the kids as he was coaching them, was just awesome. And then, and Oak, at University of Virginia, Brian O'Connor, he had kind of a really unique story too, in a season that they were supposed to be, top five the whole year. And then all of a sudden they really were struggling. As that was a year Craig Littlepage the AD had brought me in to work, speak to all the head coaches there. And he was kind of at a bad place. And he'd tell the story. He's like, man, I went and I watched some of the stuff that you were doing, because he wasn't going to have time to meet with me. And then he was like, all right, we got to get together. And, we ended up getting together, and it was just a really cool conversation and friendship that started. But he would tell you that the book, the concept, that process, it helped him just get the right perspective on what he should be focusing on. Cause he can be wound up just like most baseball players, man. Baseball coaches there. I found out they're so much more analytical than I'm an emotive guy. That's why I'm more basketball, football, like high intensity, where baseball guys are just so much more analytical, controlled, but he went through some really cool shifts that season, and they ended up winning the College World Series. So it's really, and again, like I said, both those guys had just become great friends. I go back, I've been back multiple times to see him and stay in touch with both of them frequently.
Yeah.
So I've
So
learned a lot from both of them. So
is there a money back guarantee if I read this book and I don't win the College World Series? Because it sounds like everybody that you work with either wins the College World Series, or the college football
yeah,
playoff. You've worked with some pretty cool
no,
people, and it's cool how just by doing the right things, the right results will happen. And it just comes to remind me, like, there's different ways to win. It sounds like there's you can still win a championship, but almost do it in a way that's self-serving versus team serving. And Todd, the book, it's a must read. Everybody go get it. We'll put the link in the show notes, but keep up the great work there, because it's just amazing what you're doing and the way that you've been able to encourage and inspire, and just helping those two coaches. They have 30 players on their roster, and those 30 men are
yeah,
going to be dads. So it's like you've impacted, probably can't even put a number on it. So one, keep
yeah.
up the great work, and kind of end us with this. Where are you spending your time today? If somebody wants to get to know you better or work with you, like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So, well, let me just say this first, Casey. On that, I appreciate the kind words, but those guys. Again, like I said, I've been extremely blessed. When I go to places like that, I've learned so much from Brian O'Connor and Gilly, and even guys like Urban, Dabo Sweeney, Tony Bennett. I've had the opportunity to be around those guys, but I certainly didn't. The book, in a lot of cases, like in Dabo and Tony's cases, those guys were guys that they get it. Those guys have always been living and leading those ways, So all of us, I think, go through that, where we know what the right way to do is. We just have a hard time staying true to it. Sometimes that book helps kind of bring that back up. So I definitely don't want to take any credit for those national. Those guys are all brilliant coaches, and I just feel blessed to have been able to learn, be around a little bit. But no, I still work with, I still work with some teams out there. I have a limited amount of time because I work with a public company that I actually have a position in right now that I am serving as an executive vice president, and we're going through a cultural transformation. So we got about 10,000 employees right now, 10 or 11,000, and places all over the country. And so I'm charged with kind of helping, so I've been back in the lab for the last few years. Fortunately, CEO team that I work with are great because they know, that I've got, I work with South Carolina football, and I'm going to actually be with Wisconsin basketball next week. And so I still do a lot of that, which helps my perspective. We, I'm learning all the time, and I always will, man. I'm 53, and I don't have any plans I hope I can do this until I'm 80 years old. So, but I'm still, again, I still coach, work with some other CEOs and business leaders out there. And I still work, like I said, with some other, coaches and programs out there too. So, like I said, I'm going to always be doing that. So, you can find me on the website, on Twitter, and all that other stuff. It's easy to find me. If you look at the book, that's the kind of lead in. So, I always tell people, I think if you read the book, you'll kind of see where my heart is.
That's it. Well, Todd, thank you so much. We'll put all the links in the show notes. You've been fantastic, and thanks for being a guest on the Dugout CEO. Dugout Nation, what an amazing time with Todd. A couple big takeaways I got for you. Number one, warrior or a monster? We all have it in us, but which one are we, a warrior or a monster? It's that tension between competitiveness and valuing human beings in the context of coaching and leadership in sports and business. And monsters, they lack that self-control and understanding of important qualities like humility. And warriors are calculated. They fight for a larger cause, and they possess qualities like self-control, humility, and a sense of purpose. The monster, it's driven by selfish desires, while the warrior, it embodies the selflessness, service, and positive qualities like patience, kindness, and self-control. And number two, Todd's expertise is helping people with misguided passions, misplaced priorities, and misunderstood purpose. We focused on purpose and that being like the kind of thing that you must nail before you jump into passion and priorities. What's your purpose? Can you answer it? And is it clear? And number three, don't hire yes men. Todd worked with World Series winning coaches like Brian O'Connor and Gary Gilmore. And not only were they clear on their purpose and their passions and their priorities, but they were great at surrounding themselves with the right team. Players, yeah, you need them. You have to have great players to win the game. But he also said that great leaders at any level surround themselves with others who can challenge them. He is big on having no yes men, making sure that people are going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Be open and honest with yourself. You might not always be right or get it right, but be humble and bring in others and surround yourself with people that can challenge you.